with a very small team, we have worked very hard in order to get to the position we're in today, which I think is to everyone's benefit. I'd like to introduce you to the people with me today. I have enormous support from all the directors and also a number of the advisors who are here today. First of all, on my far left is Horatio Furman. He has been with the board since 2011. Introduce you to Mark Wainwright on my left. He similarly joined the company in 2011. And what I'd like to say about them both, while they are stepping down at the close of the AGM today, is that they have given me an enormous level of support since the time I started as chairman in late October last year. So I am grateful to them, and I'm conscious you may have one or two questions for them. On my far right is Jeremy Hawke. Jeremy Hawke, a touch older than me. I have known Jeremy for a few years. I invited him to join the company after I mentioned Bmr Agm Resources and where the operations are in Cabway. I was interested to know that Jeremy had spent the first 4 years of his working life at Cabway. So he probably knows more about the mining business at BMR than any director has had formerly over the last few years. Welcome to the board, Jeremy. And also to introduce the various parties around, we have on my right Michael Corcoran of Kerman & Co, our legal advisors. We have representing WH Ireland, our nominated advisor, Chris Fielding and Mark Leonard. We have Leo Malkin of our auditors. Thank you, Leo. Crowe Clark Whitehill. Crowe Clark Whitehill is an international firm of auditors, and they've again given us an enormous amount of time and input and been out to Cabway as part of their audit. We have Gervais from our registrars as well. I'm grateful to him today. Other parties very close to me at the company are two individuals who are fundamental to helping me produce the accounts and get them ready. First of all, Dennis Bailey, a senior consultant to the company, and Norman Lott, who's a chartered accountant and has helped put the figures together. Norman somehow is known to some of you as Nigel, but I can assure you his name is Norman. The programme today is that I want to provide some general background to you and hopefully address some of the questions that you might have today. I will ask Jeremy then to stand up and say a few words about the operations in Cabway. BMR, of course, is all about processing the tailings that we have. We do have good assets there, and the opportunity now is to convert those into some form of precipitate that will have market value. So I think for the first time in BMR's life, we do have a good history coming through to possible generation of revenue in due course. Now, there's an impressive turnout of shareholders. Obviously, we provided too many seats, and do move forward if you would like to do so. I've had the opportunity to have met some of you before, and to speak to some of you in recent months. And my thanks go to Tim, Lewis, Steve, Gary, Stuart, Joe Howell, to name a few of you. And I've also read some of the chat lines. I know we have a fairly active following on the chat line forum. I just wonder if the concept of internet trolls applies to company directors, but I can assure you we are cognizant of the messages that are relayed there. Many of you have clear ideas on how the company should be run. Of course, we have a board of directors to do that. And I know that the sort of analogy I'd have is that during the recent election, the people who knew how to run the country were all driving taxis or cutting hair. It's interesting that in the last 7 months since I joined, there have been 3 presidents in Zambia, and we can name those for you if you like. There have been 3 party leaders resigning as a result of the general election, and we now have 3 new directors at BMR after Horatio and Mark stepped down. So I hope that that's good omens for all of us, Zambia, BMR, and the UK. But as I say, be assured we have very clear ideas on how the company should be run. What I'd like to start off by saying is we are very sorry for your losses. I know that some of you have said that the board is not sympathetic to what has happened. I think any loss of investment opportunity is a very sad loss. I think you have in part been led astray, and we do recognise that what we need to do is to recover some of those losses for you, and that's what we're endeavouring to do. So we are sympathetic. I mean, that expression is normally used in relation to a dead person when you're speaking to a friend or a relative. But I can assure you that BMR is not dead. We're not flogging a dead donkey. There is life. We have the tailings, and we look forward to progressing with the processing of the tailings. So I very much believe there's life in the company. But I think the issues you want addressing are: what happened? Why did it happen? What am I doing about it? Could it happen again? What's the future, and who am I? And I'm conscious you don't know who I am. You're very kindly shown up today, probably in part to meet me, hear the board and hear the story. So I can just tell you a little bit about myself. I come from a large family of medical doctors. I started studying medicine at a very early age. I was just turned 17. I jumped a couple of years at school. And latterly, my father having thrown me out of the home for giving up medicine to follow his footsteps, I then latterly trained as a chartered accountant and joined the city. So I've been in investment banking for the last 30 years, principally as an advisor, leading a number of flotations, fundraisings, mergers and acquisitions and disposals. So I've got a great deal of expertise in what listed companies are there to do. For the last 10 years, I've been involved as a director of companies, both as chairman and a director of a variety of companies, also in a variety of sectors. I've been in the mining sector for the last 5 years. Initially, I joined the board of an Australian iron ore company. I'm pleased to say that in the period I was there, which was up to the first AGM in 12 months, the price of iron ore increased from $120 a tonne up to $170. Since I left, nothing to do with me, but the iron ore prices collapsed. I'm on the board with Jeremy of a small private rutile sands mining opportunity in Cameroon, and I'm on the board as a non-exec director of a company that invests in gold prospects in Thailand and Spain. So I have a good level of expertise in the sector. Now, my key values for you as shareholders is to generate positive returns. There's no point in us being a listed company sitting there doing nothing, spending money. We have to generate positive returns for you, and that's what I intend to do. The second thing that I believe is absolutely vital is that we have high standards of corporate governance. For me, reputation is critical. If I don't succeed here, if I don't deliver the returns, and if I have excuses for corporate governance failures, I'm to blame. I'd never work again. So I have very high level standards of corporate governance. And I achieved this in part by building up and working with a good management team. I think I've got very good people around me, very good advisors. I've created all of that, and I believe in the future strongly for the company as a result of that. In terms of my experience of running listed companies, I did chair a real estate company. It had about €500 million invested in Central Europe. We invested in offices, hotels, and some retail developments. We had a very difficult shareholder base there. We had an activist institutional shareholder base, including the likes of Laxi, if you've come across them. And I had to balance the interests of shareholders against the interests of the CEO, who had a big stake in the company. I led a rights issue for the company, £10 million rights issue. I was the UK-based director doing that, and I moved the company from AIM to the main market. At the same time, I had to get rid of the chief executive and bring in new management to the company. So I'm not afraid of a challenge as and when it's needed. Another example, I chaired recently an early stage technology company on the stock market, and after a few months of chairing that company, I discovered that the founder of the company, who was a former director, was in America marketing securities, raising millions of dollars and pocketing all the money. I knew nothing about this until some investors in the US approached me about that. So I went for him. I worked with the FBI, and that gentleman is now sitting in a prison in the States. He does use his mobile phone from prison, which we refer to as his cell phone, and I just wait for the time that he comes out. But I'm not afraid to take action as and when it's necessary. If you're interested in that, there is a link to an FBI website, and you can read stories about that. Some of you have asked how I got involved with BMR. I think there's obviously a concern about Mr. Agm and Mr. Agm's links with either any of us. I was introduced to Masood Agm only last year by Dennis Bailey. Dennis Bailey was a former and had acted for Masood Agm in the past, but had not acted for him at BMR. So I spoke to Agm. I met him just a couple of times, and I was talking about raising funds for an agricultural opportunity in Africa. Nothing developed. I continued in discussions with Dennis Bailey. Dennis called me one Thursday in October and said, would you be able to lend a hand, possibly as a director of BMR, because I don't think Masood is up to the task any longer. So the next morning I went along to the board meeting, presented my case of what I thought could happen. Masood then resigned because of dementia, and Horatio and Mark voted me in as a director, and I became chairman of the company. But I have had no money from BMR Agm. I've had nothing to do with him except for a couple of brief meetings in the past. And similarly, Dennis Bailey, who you've asked about too, has not received any money from BMR and had no business dealings with BMR. Once I started at BMR, the first thing you do, and I'm an accountant, is look at the balance sheet. And there were clearly problems in the balance sheet because certain items there couldn't be justified. I announced first of all that we had a question mark over £4.3 million on the balance sheet, and I used my contacts at Crowe Clark Whitehill to start an investigation into the company's affairs. The shares were then suspended, and I delayed the reporting of the results. The auditors had almost completely on their final draft of the accounts to June 14, and I wasn't satisfied with those accounts whatsoever. So the investigation continued. I announced that losses could be of the order of £10 to £12 million in the company, and at the same time I was focused on trying to get a listing back for BMR. As I say, if you feel there is no listing, you feel you lost everything. So one of the big tasks we had to achieve was getting restoration of the listing back. In order to do that, I had to negotiate with the major party I saw where we had issues. That was the Agm family, and we achieved an injection of £1 million. The amount of money we started with at the beginning was considerably less than that proposed by them. And in the circumstances, I feel £1 million recovery for the company was an excellent result. It enabled us to have sufficient working capital going forward. What we've had to do is to sacrifice any further claims against the Agms. What the Agms would have been able to contribute was actually very limited. We had investigation into the affairs of Masood Agm, and we quickly learned that there was little opportunity for us to pursue him personally. So I realised that settlement has brought matters to a close as far as the company is concerned. But it was a result, and we got the listing back. So we announced results for the year to June 14 on the 14th of April. We then had to quickly do the interim results, and those were done by the 30th of April, and listing was restored on the 1st of May, just 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm delighted we got the listing back, and I hope you're grateful for that. So during the period since starting at BMR up to today, I was very involved in getting the stock market listing back, getting sufficient working capital, getting a professional team in place, checking the real values of BMR, and finding a way to create value. And we remain focused on that. Having appointed Crowe Clark Whitehill as investigators, the most logical choice to change the auditors was to ask Crowe Clark Whitehill to step in as auditors to the company. It made no sense, in my view, to have a small firm based in Harrow-on-the-Hill as auditors for a listed company in the stock market. That's, I know, for me and for some of you, that might have been a red flag issue. But we've replaced that firm with CCW, and I'm delighted they're auditors today, and they're up for a vote to support their continuation with the company. As I say, Michael I've known previously, and we appointed Kearns as new lawyers to the company. In terms of the London operations, I was quite surprised to find that the company had a lease, and it still has a lease, on a 4,000 square foot building on Park Lane, which is it's rather a white elephant. There were a number of businesses operating there, but we have closed all the businesses that are operating, and the three of us, I'm there every day, sometimes weekends. We moved to a small room in this large property, and we work from there. We managed to secure a return of empty business rates because we use none of the rest of the building, and we would like to try and extricate ourselves from the lease because it is a burden. The cost of the lease is about £200,000 a year, which is completely unnecessary. So we continue to focus on cost recovery. As I said before in my introduction, we secured the services of Dennis Bailey and Norman Lott as our CFO, agreed terms with Jeremy to join the board, and I look forward to appointing an additional non-executive director. We need to have 3 directors, and with the stepping down of my colleagues on the left, we will be appointing a 3rd director at some point stage after this meeting. So the whole team has been changed. It's a completely new set of advisors and directors, and I've even changed the PR firm and also the website provider. I have enormous confidence in all those who are working with me, and I believe we've got the right team to go forward for you as the owners of the company. Zambia, of course, is a very important element of BMR's position in the market. We have Jeff Casson, who is a metallurgist. He also acts as our general manager, and he manages a tight ship out there. We've got about 30 local Zambians who work at the company, but they're very low cost. But Jeff manages that. We no longer engage the services of a couple of people whose names may be known to you from the past. We previously had Dennis Heumann as the general manager out in Zambia. He had to resign from the company due to ill health of his wife. So he left the business. And secondly, some of you have asked about Neil Rowley. Neil Rowley was a consultant engaged by the company really to advance the copper interests of BMR, and his contract came to an end at the end of April. So Neil Rowley is no longer with us. So that's Zambia and the UK. In terms of the assets, you'll appreciate that there have been very large write-downs of the assets. Some of you have queried the extent to which the assets have been written down, but I can assure you that we believe that the net asset position of the company of about £8 million now is very fairly stated, and that is covered by an extensive audit from CCW. We're comfortable with that position, but I realise a lot of the assets have disappeared. Some of those, as you'll see from the chairman's statement in the accounts, represented assets that didn't exist, that comprised expenses that were capitalised, and acquisitions of resource that would not generate any value in the short term. So that has been written off. Of course, we're not alone at BMR in write-downs. I believe that the size of the write-downs for all of us is a very material figure. And it is material relative to BMR in the same way that Tesco's had its $250 million write-down of profits recently. And you're probably aware that Hewlett-Packard is suing Autonomy and its management for false accounting, and the claim is for $7 billion. I don't say that BMR is failing into insignificance. It's not. I think it's as material as those losses to those shareholders. So I'm afraid, we're not alone. BMR has suffered losses, and other companies have suffered losses too. It is in part mismanagement, and also I think there was a degree of expectation put out in the market through announcements which perhaps could have been better worded. I give you the example recently of a certain mining entrepreneur who talked about 100 billion barrels of oil somewhere near Gatwick, when the market expectation was for 4 billion barrels of oil. The expectations would change subsequently. So there are people who put out announcements that lead to unrealistic expectations. And I'm aware of a particular advisor in the city who is in cahoots with one African country's Minister of Mines, and he secures licenses for people. The licenses are then revoked, and then he has blackmailed one company, and that has been reported to the SFO. that I'm aware of, and that advisor is still in existence. So I'm afraid that there are certain problems that we have in the market. But part of my job is to put in place systems and people to ensure that we never suffer from any of those problems that we've experienced in the past. I'm here to protect you. The announcements, I did say I don't want to go through a number of the historic announcements. All I would say is that there was a high degree of expectation from those. And just to read what I've said here, that while the communications to shareholders who were supported by the then board, a number of them appear to have contained too optimistic degree of expectation, which for the benefit of hindsight was unrealistic. I don't think it's sensible to go through the historic announcements of the company, or indeed to go through the M&A activity of BMR. We have to move on from where we were. I will focus on the future of the business in just a moment with Jeremy. The reporting requirements and the sort of follow-up to the investigation remains a matter for the board, but I want to assure you that is certainly an item on the board's agenda to pursue recoveries where practicable, where we can get some recoveries, we will announce accordingly. So we're not letting anyone off the hook. Now, the positioning of BMR in the market, there may be rogues all the way along the chain in terms of some of the mining companies out there, but you can start off at early stage exploration and prospecting. You go into the mining stage, and mining can actually generate a lot, or it could generate absolutely nothing. BMR, I believe, is at the next stage of the chain, where we have huge deposits of tailings that can be processed into a concentrate or a precipitate. That is a very safe option for BMR at the moment. We have the assets, and it's a matter of converting those. We're not at an early stage speculative position in the market, and we're not at the end user position. And I think it's a very fair point to start with BMR, build that up. We'll see if we can find further opportunities within the tailings market on a worldwide basis, and also see if we can find one or two interesting add-ons as we develop the business. So I'm keen to continue to build up BMR and to create value for you. Or for all of us. Of course, I bought shares in the company recently, as did Dennis Bailey, and I am with you for the long term. Now, we've yet to complete the testing of the results, which Jeremy will go to a little bit further. But what is good is that there should be a lead and zinc concentrate, and the prices of lead and zinc in the market have effectively stayed fairly solid, and if anything on the increase. Now, I have nothing to do with that, but it's lucky we're in that position. I mentioned iron ore earlier, which had collapsed, but we see that there's a very good market for lead and zinc as we progress. We, as you know from the announcements, believe that leach processing is the method to go. As some of you have asked about concerns over ZEMA, first of all, would ZEMA give us, if we need to apply for ZEMA approval, because it is a change in the process that was originally used and applied for by BMR. So we need to apply. We believe that ZEMA are likely to give us the approval, and they're likely to give it to us in a fairly short space of time. Jeremy will go into this a bit further, but ZEMA, who we saw last week, Jeremy and I were out in Zambia, we had a meeting with ZEMA, and they informed us that once all the paperwork is together, there is a formal 60-day approval process. So we believe it's likely. And the plant next door, owned by Glencore, called Sable Zinc, we visited the general manager there. That's been mothballed, that has been effectively closed down, but they have ZEMA approval for a leaching process. So we know that locally, leach processing has the support of ZEMA. And if anything, what we're doing is removing lead from the tailings, which is environmentally friendly. It was interesting also for us developing BMR in Zambia that Sable Zinc laid off 300 people, and that they provide a good source of local high-quality resource for us as a labour force. So we are confident in the future for the company. I've said Jeremy and I were out there previously in a 60-day time. As I said, I joined you as a shareholder in the company. Now, I suppose that the point of the meeting is to put resolutions to you all for your approval. We spent a long time considering what proposals were appropriate, what resolutions were appropriate to be put to you. And we can go through each of those resolutions in turn and give you some background to that. I was going to start the story with the Max Bygraves comment. I want to tell you a story, but I don't think it's appropriate. This is a serious story of tragedy in part, but I think it's got a very good outcome for us. And in the words of a couple of other entertainers, Morgan and Wise, whose catchphrase was "Bring me sunshine," I'd like to just pass over to Jeremy to talk a little bit about the sunshine for BMR. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Gentlemen, I'll have a little chat about who I am or what I've done. I started my career with Anglo American in Zambia, as Alex said, and I spent the first 2 years at Katwe, and then I moved up to the Copper Belt. I worked on the Copper Belt at Inchanga Mine. I was in charge of the open pit maintenance department. And thereafter I was invited to move up to the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I went up there as a project engineer on a big copper project at Tenki Fungarumi, which was quite enlightening, I can assure you. And then after that, that project unfortunately stalled, and we were all laid off, and I went down to work with Rio Tinto at the uranium mine in what is now Namibia, in Southwest Africa at the time. And I ended up as the mine manager there, responsible for the whole mining activities. After that, I left, went to Johannesburg, started my own business, went into manufacturing fairly specialized engine protection units, fitting them, offering the service. And then after that, I came back to the UK. After the UK, I worked with International Mining Consultants as principal mechanical engineer, and spent a lot of time running around Africa, Far East, Eastern Europe. I was there doing work for about 5-6 years with them. And then after that, I got involved in putting mining projects together, working privately, and as Alex said, we are at the moment looking at an opportunity jointly in Cameroon. But that's not here for the debate today, it's just a little bit of background. So I think what I'm trying to say is I'm first and foremost an operator. I've worked on mines. We make things happen, we fix things, we have problems, we sort them out, and we produce things. So that is where I'm coming from, and that is one of the major contributions I hope I'm going to make to BMR. Right, so having got that off my chest, I want to talk about the future, but I think also what I want to do is talk a little bit about the past, because, and particularly what happened in terms of the evolution of where this company was going. For example, there were probably about 3 or 4 groups who were competing to try and produce a process for the actual extraction of lead and zinc from the tailings there. And with that group of 4 companies, there were actually 2 companies competing with each other. One saying, my system is better than yours, or I can do things better than yours. And it was very, very confusing. So when I joined BMR, one of the things we did was we trawled through all of the reports and all of the information, technical information that we had to hand. And one of the things that came out of it was the definitive feasibility study, the DFS, in which so much, faith was put. It was the holy grail, it was the way forward. And obviously it was the subject of a fairly extensive RNS announcement. Now, we had to take this seriously. We had to, as a board of directors, take cognizance of what this DFS said. We looked through it, and there were large areas of this report which were actually quite good. They were well executed, but they weren't executed by the group who put the report together. They were actually executed by very specialised companies in this country and also outside of the UK. But the unfortunate part about the DFS is they had all the information there, but they came to the wrong conclusions. For example, when you have tailings, they're very complex, and particularly so with Cadway. And one of the things you have to do is you've got to look at what they call mineralogy. Now, the mineralogy tells you exactly what minerals are sticking in the tailings and how they're all sort of associated with each other. For example, you could have zinc, and you can have 4 variations of zinc in various chemical forms. And it tells you an awful lot as to how you go about extracting the zinc and the lead. Now, unfortunately, the people who wrote the DFS report didn't take real cognizance of this. And they ploughed ahead and said, look, gravity separation is the way to go. So, okay, we had to think about this. We had to think about it very carefully. And the only way to prove whether gravity separation was the way to go or not was to actually simulate the plant conditions in a continuous fashion. So we shipped 5 tons of material down to Johannesburg. We put it in the hands of a very reputable spiral manufacturer who simulated the whole process, the cleaner stage, the rougher stage, the scavenger stage, and the results were basically very disappointing. We only recovered 17% of the zinc in the tailings. We only recovered 54% of the lead in the tailings. And that really blew the whole DFS report out of the water. It just isn't feasible. Plus the fact that it generated I'll take a step back. What happened was that when you get tailings, you have to clean it, you have to scrub it. And this scrubbing process left us with over 60% in the very, very fine fractions. Now, fine fractions will never be recovered in spirals. So that almost isn't entirely written off, because you still have value there, but you could not use it on spirals. And in fact, at the end of the day, we're only able to treat something like about 22% of the material on spirals. So the combination of not being able to recover the zinc and only to be able to treat 22% of the material meant that spirals, the definitive feasibility study, was not the way to go. However, fortunately, about 2 years ago, there was a study that was started on the leach process by a small metallurgical company in South Africa. And this chap came up with some very interesting results. And he used conventional technology in terms of the actual leaching process, the washing process, and the whole circuit. But the results we got were such that they were very encouraging. Now, I have to emphasize that the process that was proposed has never been used anywhere in the metallurgical mining world. It's new. But the component parts that make up the circuit are all common and are well known. But to join them all up is the clever part. Now, we're at a point now where we believe that we have the joined up circuit just about proved. We are waiting for the final report to come through. We will do a peer review of it to make sure there are no fatal flaws. We don't just accept a report that's been done by an expert. We do actually get people to go and check all this. But we're very close now to getting that report in. And the interesting thing is that we are going to target fairly high levels of recovery, and we're talking about both the wash plant tailings and also the leach plant residue, both of which can be treated in the same circuit. So we produce a plant and we can put both sets of tailings through it. We're talking, when it comes to wash plant tailings, we believe we can target something around about 70% recovery in the zinc. Just take a step back and think of the gravity separation, which was 17, and we can recover, we believe, of the target is 85% lead. So that's encouraging. On the leach plant residue, the recoveries are slightly lower, and the reason for that, I'm sorry, we're going into technical stuff, don't fall asleep, please. On the leach plant residue, the recovery is a bit lower because there is iron locked in with the zinc, and it is a bit problematic. However, 50% recovery on zinc and probably 80% on the zinc, on the lead. So we've got much higher recoveries coming through, which is really, really good. And I think we have made a mention of this in the booklet there, but we don't have the definitive numbers yet, but when we get the definitive numbers, we will be making an RNS announcement on that. Right, so what are we going to produce with this leach? We're going to produce a precipitate, and we are at the moment having conversations with off-takers about taking this product. But this is very early discussions, and we can't say very much about this at all at the moment. Only when we get the final figures in and we can see the results can we get into any sort of serious discussion with off-takers, because they want to know all of the constituents, mineral constituents in the precipitate, just to see what penalties or what possible credits we might get. So once we get this report through from our friends in South Africa on the mini pilot plant, we'll be able to take the parameters, the operating parameters, and we'll then put that into the actual main Cadbury pilot plant. Now, we're going to hire a process design engineer, because you take all these parameters, and then what you do is you calculate your pump sizes, your tank sizes, and you bolt a whole lot together and you make it work. Now, our friends at Sable Zinc, who we've got a very good relationship with, have got all sorts of bits and pieces lying around the place. They're not prepared to go and sell the plant because they still think they might start it up again. So we have to exclude any possibility of that at this stage. However, they've got some bits and pieces, and also, interestingly, they're going to give us a piece of land which is right beside our tailings. And if you turn to where we've got JORC compliant resource, you'll see, as you look at it, in the right-hand corner, there's a sort of little nick. That is roughly where we're going to put the plant. That is the ground that our friends Sable Zinc have offered us. Now, what we're going to, they've asked us to register interest with them, and we'll get down and negotiate with them, to take that particular spot. Alex and I visited. It's a huge area. It's concreted, and it's ideal just to go and stick the plant up. So that's the plan there. Now, also, it's very convenient for depositing the new tailings. So the pumping distance isn't very long, and it would work very well for us. The power is close by, the water's close by. It's an ideal position. Now, when it comes to the Cadbury plant itself, we are very cognizant of the costs that we might be incurred. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to beg, borrow and steal in many ways, but I've got to justify this.
Beg and borrow, Jerry.
Sorry?
Beg and borrow.
Well, yes, yeah, beg and borrow. I've got to justify this because it's a pilot plant we're talking about, and we're talking about a new process. So we may well have to cut it and change it and modify it as we go along. But we believe that we're going to look at something of the order of a 10 to 15 ton an hour plant initially to make some sense of it. Plus the fact that if we're going to sell the product, we've got to provide a sufficient quantity of lead or zinc precipitate for any off-taker to take away and analyse. They may want 10, 15 or 20 tons of the stuff. And we can certainly produce that with that size of plant. So the other thing I think that what I would like to say about the tailings itself, we've got the JORC report, which we mentioned here. At current market prices, there is $880 million of material in situ, in the ground, in that tailings, and that's just the leach plant residue and the wash plant slimes. A significant resource. Now, don't think we're going to get it all out. We're not going to suddenly turn all of that into a... There are recoveries involved, which I've spoken about, and which we've targeted and we believe is possibly achievable. So there are the recoveries to take into account. If we sell to the outside world, then there will be obviously discounts that will be demanded of us. There will be transport, there will be smelting costs. So there will be costs that we're going to have to take on. But we have a very, very valuable resource there, which we will, and I'm confident we are going to exploit. Now, Jeff Casson down there, which we've spoken about. Jeff Casson is a first-class metallurgist, and I'm an operator. And we will make it work. I can tell you that. I can give you that absolute assurance that we will do it. And I've had 3 visits out to Cabby since the beginning of the year. And I will be out there regularly. And we will be dealing directly with all the people who are going to provide the equipment, who are putting it together, and we're going to use as much of our own human resources as possible. We're not going to go out and hire fancy plant manufacturers, the Bechtels or the Batemans or whoever it is of this world. We're going to do it ourselves. It's a pilot plant, and we're going to put it together and make it work. Later, when we consider the future, we may well bring professional people into building. But we are going to produce. That is a clear objective and strategy that we've got. Now, right, I just want to just take a look at my notes here a moment. Yes, there was a lot of talk about there's another 65,000 tonnes of wash plant tailings which hasn't been JORC resource, but we know where it is, and so we'll stick that in through the plant as well. But in Alex's annual report, we've written down the Volts kiln and also the ISF slag. It's difficult, problematic stuff, and in the short term we can't attach any value to it at all. However, I would say that we are looking at it, and there's also a little picture under technical partners, and that really encapsulates the problems that we've got there. It's basically glass with zinc embedded in it. Now, we've got to find a clever way of handling it, and I'm not making any promises that we can do so, but we are going to look at it because it does constitute, in the long term, a valuable resource. So bear with us on that. It has been written down quite rightly, but we're not going to give up on it. So just moving on. I will mention the Volts kiln. The other reason why the Volta kiln material is being written down, it's going to be very difficult to treat. And also, interestingly enough, the Volta kiln feedstock was the old wash plant tailings. So it's already been treated with wash plant tailings. So what we're doing is to go back and retreat, what the residue is from the Volta kiln itself. It's going to be difficult, and I hold no hope out for that at all. We won't give up on it, but it's low grade, and I think pretty much a lost cause. Now, let me talk a little bit about other opportunities. On my, where we have the large-scale mining permit, I think, let me just commend you to that. There is a picture. If you look at that on the large-scale mining permit, you'll see on the left-hand side where the tailings is concentrated. Now, if you sort of go down to roughly in the middle of this rather complex little drawing, that is where the old airfield is. Now, the old airfield deposit currently is covered with industrial units. There's the Chinese there, there's Lebanese there, there's Uncle Tom Cobley and all there. There is no chance that we're going to get into that. So it's something we are, what is written off? We can't do anything about it. It's overdone. The only other area which is of serious interest is in the southeast corner of the right-hand side. Now, there was quite a lot of work done at that site many years ago by the actual mining company itself, the old mining company. And they came across some interesting deposits there, which I think is worth looking at. No promises, again, but we'll have a look at that as we go along and see what we can make out of it. Right, the only other thing that I want to just mention to you is our priorities and our program. We hope to be in a position to have the parameters for the main pilot plant in the next 3 or 4 weeks. From there, we're going to get the process engineer involved. We're going to design the plant, as I said. We're going to lay it out, and we have already started the process of looking for hardware which we could use. There's a lot of equipment lying around the Copper Belt. There's a lot of equipment lying around in Cabway, so we'll look there and see what we can find. But it's not essentially a hugely complicated process. It's tanks and pumps and pipes, but there is a clever aspect of it. We are not going to discharge any toxic fluids. Any discharges will be plain water, and that has been attracted, and that's been very attractive as far as Bmr is concerned, by the way. So that's actually a good point where we can move on to Bmr. Now, we've had 2 meetings with Bmr already, and we expressed our concern to them about the length of time it took to go and get the approval across the line the last time. In fact, we said it's unacceptable. They were very good, and they said, yes, we understand. It wasn't entirely their fault. I think it was just the whole thing wasn't mismanaged, but somehow it just got bogged down, and there was not enough pressure put on Bmr to get the reports through. But I can assure you right now, we'll keep pressure on them. Now, they did explain to us very clearly how the system works. I'll go through this now just for your own benefit. The first thing we have to do is to submit to them the terms of reference of the study. Now, the terms of reference will not only go through all the various headings that we've got to address, it will also give the list of key qualified people who will put the plant together. Now, once the Bmr have approved that, it speeds the process up. They say, yeah, okay, we're happy with what you've got, we're happy with the people doing it, and then you go get on with it. So off we go, and we go and talk to the people in Cabwee, not me, but the people who are doing the study. That's about a 2-week process of consultation. And then what we do is we go back to Zima with a draft approval. And the nice thing about all this is we're going to be able to lift a lot of the previous study done, the one that took 12 months or 14 months or whatever. We're going to lift a lot of them out and stick it into this new study. The different part is the technical stuff, which we will have the report of in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So we slam all this together. We do the consultation with the local people, put the report together, and we put it into Zima. Now, Zima, as Alex said, told us that once they have the draft report, it is a 60-day process of coming back to us, and we're going to hold them to it, be on their backs. We've got a very good local consultancy involved. The guy who's running the consultancy actually did frame the Zima regulations, so he knows them inside out. He also is very well known amongst the Zima people themselves. So we think we've got a good consultant available, and we're pretty confident that we'll get the approval within the framework of the time, the time that we're trying to get this lot together. Talking about timing, I don't want to make any commitment about that at all, because we do need to get the report in from our metallurgists. We do need to get the planning together, but once we're confident, we know when the timing can be put together in terms of getting the pilot plant up and running, we'll let you know. But at the moment, I'm going to stall on that and say sorry, I can't tell you very much about it. But we will get back to you on that. Now, just moving on, just a couple of other things. Off-takers. We are talking to off-takers, as I said. But what we've found is, interestingly, there may be a local market for our product. And certainly one of our neighbours, we had a meeting with him just before we came away, has indicated an interest in our product in lead. There's no agreement, there's just preliminary discussions, but the guy is very positive. The other thing that also is of interest is there is a fertilizer plant that's going to be put together in Zambia, and they're going to be looking for zinc sulfate, something else we can produce. And there's obviously, we're going to talk to these people and see what they say. If that's the case, it could play into our hands, quite nicely, because we're then not faced with having to give discounts on material. We're not faced with having to pay costs, shipping costs. We're not faced with having to, smelter charges and all these other accessories which come in and degrade, what our profits might be. But it's early days. It's an alternative, and a very interesting alternative. Right, finally, I'd like to just talk quickly about the World Bank. The World Bank had a visit to Cabwee, it was about a month ago, just over a month ago, 5 weeks ago. And I was out there then, in fact I was out just before they arrived. But Jeff Casson made a very, very good pitch to them. They came to Cabwee, they spent 3 days in Cabwee, he saw them, he had one-on-one meetings with them, and he got the message across loud and clear. He explained to them that we are part of the solution as far as the Cabwee is concerned, and as far as the pollution and the sustainability of employment is there. Effectively, we will be removing 200,000 plus tons of lead out of the environment now. And that struck a bell with these guys. We also went through the process that we were proposing, so they understood that we're not going to go and discharge more noxious substances into the environment. So they took that on board. And there was another follow-up meeting before they left in Lusaka itself, where our Zima consultant also made the pitch in our favour. So there was a very, very strong and very positive response from the World Bank people. Now, please don't think this is going to turn into money for BMR. It isn't necessarily going to be the case, because the World Bank operates in a way whereby they don't actually go out and hand money to companies. Very, very rarely, let's put it that way. However, they do channel money through, for example, NGOs and through governments. And we're right in the face of the government and the NGOs where that's concerned. So we'll have to see how things develop. They will come back with their reports somewhere about 5 months down the track. So we don't expect to hear anything probably until later on in the year, September, October, or something like that. But very positive as far as we're concerned. Now, finally, what am I going to say here now? I think what I want to say in conclusion is that as a board of directors, and with Jeff Cusson and the guys out there, the control of the technical content and the way we're going to go forward is with the board now. We haven't got competing groups, slapping and snarling between each other about how better they can do it. We are in control, and we're going to remain in control, and we will direct the technical approach and the technical content of what goes on, and that I think is a quantum shift from what went on before. So, gentlemen, I'm optimistic. I will do my best. I will support, and I've got the support of Alex, which is particularly helpful. I've got the support of the guys out in Kabwe, good people there. So I'll end that on a positive note. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Lucky we just have the assets at Kabwe, otherwise we'll need a few more hours for the next stage here. Now I need to move on to the formal business of the meeting. We've only got a room for a short period of time after this, so if I may move to the formal business, and I put questions answer session for each resolution, but I have to note that we are bound by the terms of, in particular, the settlement agreement, by regulatory constraints, and while we will have an announcement about the result of the AGM, I don't want to disclose anything that is possibly price sensitive at this stage. Can I answer questions when we get to each resolution?
So these are general questions on the technicalities.
We can have a session afterwards if you'd like to follow up with Jeremy. I think let's do it afterwards, but I think for now we need to move on to the formal business. But I'm pleased you're interested in the process there. I mean, Jeremy is a fundamental part of the business going forward. Resolution 1, I'll have to pass over to Jeremy to propose that, but I would say that the proxies that we have in place in favour, and thank you very much for your support. 168,606,623 in favour, none against, 25,920,259 discretionary votes, and the abstentions of 33,510. Jeremy, can I pass over to you to propose the resolution, please?
Thank you, Alex. I'd like to propose now as an ordinary resolution of the company resolution 1, set out in the notice convening this meeting to re-elect Mr. Alex Borelli as director. Are there any questions relating to this resolution? Can I have a show of hands and agreement, please? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, all of you, and I will continue striving for our greater interests as a shareholder alongside with you. Resolution 2 is the re-election of Jeremy Hawke. Jeremy was appointed during the year, as was I, and we need to put his re-election to the meeting. Resolution 2, 168 million votes in favour, 168,143,195, 68,726 against. In the column for discretionary votes, we've got 26,314,961 and 33,510 abstaining from the vote. I'd like to ask any questions for Jeremy's re-election. If there are no questions, I'll put the vote to the meeting. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? I declare the resolution passed, as with Resolution 1. Resolution 3 is a standard resolution for the AGM to receive the report and accounts. Those, as I've said before, are delayed. They were presented to you on the 14th of April. The results for the year to June 30th of June 14, with the report of the directors and report of the auditors thereon. I just ask that Leo Malkin, a partner at Crowe Clark White, will stand up for a moment. If you have any questions on the accounts or any questions for Leo Malkin of CCW, I don't propose that he reads the report at this stage unless you'd like him to do so. Any questions? Yes, sir.
These missing documents, is there any chance of them being recovered?
Which missing documents? Are you referring to the opening balance issue of the... Well, we couldn't reconcile that initially, the uncertainty over that. Leo, I don't know if you want to comment on... we've got a clean audit of, in terms of the balances at the end of the year. We have endeavoured to find all the records. Don't forget, when we moved into the company, all the former staff have exited. There is no one else left at BMR. We've worked hard not to create records, but to work backwards over the last 3 years to get the appropriate balances moving forward. We have closing audited balances which we are satisfied with, as are CCW. I don't know if you want to comment further, Leo. All those in favour of Resolution 3? Any against? I declare the resolution carried. Thank you. Resolution 4 is to authorise the appointment of Crowe Clark White as auditors of the company and to authorise the directors to determine their remuneration, another standard resolution. As I say, Crowe Clark White, who I brought in as a firm of investigative accountants, they did an excellent job and we appointed them as auditors as well. They are a major firm and they're working closely with the auditors we have in place in Zambia. We haven't changed the local auditors. The local auditors in Zambia are Moores Road, or were Moores Road. They've now been subsumed by PKF, and we have one Mauritius holding company and an intermediate holding company. The auditors for that are Mazars, but we're happy with that. But this resolution is for the appointment of Crowe Clark Whitehill. So, any questions for Crowe Clark Whitehill? Otherwise, all those in favour, please raise your hands. Any against? I declare the resolution carried, and my thanks to you. Resolution 5 is a change of name of the company. Now, I did give some thought to a change of name. I don't think it was appropriate to lose Barclay Mineral Resources, but we can't hide the history. I think it would be confusing to the market as a whole. We're known pretty much as BMR throughout the marketplace, the stock market and elsewhere. We answer the phones as BMR, so we've kept BMR in the new name. BMR Mining PLC is the proposed name. If any of you have any questions on that resolution? All those in favour, if you'd raise your hand. Any against? Thank you very much. I declare that resolution carried. Resolution 6 is relating to the conversion of the settlement shares. You'll appreciate that the recovery I negotiated with the Alcano family was not just to get £960,000 back into the company, but also I was determined to take away some of the value that they have in the shares in the company. We started from a position at 30th of June 2011 and looked at the shareholdings they had then, and we negotiated to get recovery by effectively getting back £250,000 worth of nominal value of the shares, which I would hope have got significantly more value as time goes on. So as part of the settlement agreement, we need to go through the formal process of converting the settlement shares into deferred shares. Do any of you have any questions on that?
Just quickly, Alex. You didn't get all the shares back, did you?
No, as I say, we started from a position in 2011. I think had we pushed the envelope further, I think we would not have been able to achieve this settlement agreement. It was also a negotiation in terms of getting cash against the shares as well. And we have looked at the assets of Masud Alakani. Very difficult to go further. I believe we've done the best we can in the circumstances and the time available. So the resolution is for the conversion of the settlement shares. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Anyone against? Thank you. I declare the resolution carried. Next is resolution 7, which I've put in 2 parts, and I know there have been a number of discussions about that. The background of part A, which is the share subdivision. We have a nominal value or a par value of the shares of a penny, and we are restricted from issuing new shares at below par value. It's against the law to do that. The current price is trading into below a penny, which actually I think is quite a good level in the market considering what has happened to BMR. But we need to change the nominal value as a matter of form, otherwise we can't move forward. It's only in your interests that we change the par value. So 7A is to change the par value of the shares. Part 7B is the share consolidation. Again, I know generally you're not happy with a share consolidation, and you wouldn't be happy with a big share consolidation, and I wouldn't have proposed that. The issue here is we have 1.34 billion shares in issue. It is a huge number of shares. So I'm proposing a 10-for-1 consolidation only. If you have, for instance, 11.3% of the company at the beginning, you have 11.3% of the company afterwards. So your value, your shareholding, your percentage doesn't change whatsoever. The other element I know is some concerns you have in the marketplace that if a share consolidation takes place, you can have a new share price and the share price dribbles down. I don't believe that's going to happen. What I want to do is to create value. I know I have your support, and I will continue to work hard to deliver value for the company. I'd like to see the price increasing. But I do think in order to attract new investors, there is a slight stigma about a share price trading below a penny, and we wouldn't want to have a share price trading at 10, 20, 30p after a consolidation. I'm proposing to put it back in between 1p and 5p, to take an example. Now, if any of you have got any questions on the share consolidation part of 7b, please.
Why are you doing it now?
Well, I think it's appropriate to do it now because we're starting afresh with the company. We're starting with effectively a new name, a new team, a new broom has gone through the business. Well, we don't have to do it now. As I've said to you, I think the market...
So what's your reason for doing it now?
The market, because I want to attract new investors into the company. I want to make the price attractive. As I said, I think if you're talking about a price of below a penny, it renders the business less attractive to new participants. So I think it's a value to the company moving forward.
You're making it less liquid, you're making it less able to trade. It's more attractive possibly to institutions to raise funds, which is probably what you're alluding to without saying it explicitly.
I don't think it's less. I think the company becomes more attractive having a price above a penny. I don't believe that trading is going to be materially affected by it. I do believe, and we all believe, that it's in the best interest of the company to do this. We've obviously taken a lot of advice and sought a lot of counsel. I do think to reduce from 1.3 billion shares in issue is better for the presentation of the company moving forward. Steve?
You know what I feel about this. I think that the only thing about doing the share consolidation is that on AIM, we're not a PLC company. When you've got PLC companies that are doing share consolidation, yes, of course, you have the same percentage of the company's shares, so your shareholding doesn't change, and normally not much does happen. But on AIM, we've all seen that you do get that trickle down. I mean, if we go from half a pence, for example, to 5p, if we don't have any serious news, then we could quite easily see a trickle down to 3 pence. We may not sound like a lot, but it's actually 40% of our equity that's being wiped out. And while I'm not against it, I can see all the sense. What I would say is, I would have hoped that perhaps we could have done it on the back of some good news that perhaps could be forthcoming in the very near future rather than today. That's my own honest opinion.
Yeah, Alex, did you not consider to put this off until at least we've got the pilot plant?
Well, we believe we're on the start of a new future for the company. Jeremy has given me a very detailed description of what we're proposing to do. We believe that there will be a news flow out of the position we're in at the moment. And as I say, I think it repositions the company. Better to do this at the start. I don't think it's ever a good time to do this. And it is a limited share consolidation. The value doesn't change. I know, Steve, some examples of the price coming back afterwards, but we believe we're there to create value for the company.
Why do we do it near a penny, which may not take that long if we have? some more news coming up, because we nearly got to a penny a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
You nearly got to a penny. There are some sellers in the market, clearly, and hopefully there'll be some more buyers.
Once you've done the consolidation, obviously raising the funds, I think there's a bit of ambiguity about the 500 million maximum.
We're not raising funds.
When you're raising the funds, obviously you're adding another. Everyone's thinking there's going to be another 500,000 shares added. 5 million, is it?
Well, can I come to that resolution when we get to it?
I don't think it's linked together, though, Alex.
This is resolution 7. Part A is the change of the par value, and Part B is the share consolidation. It's one resolution.
If you consolidate the shares at, say, 5 pence a share, and you want to do a placing then at 3 pence per share, the share price is going to go down to the placing price, isn't it?
I don't share your views that the share price is in decline. Obviously, I can't dictate what happens in the market.
It depends what level you put the placing at, though, doesn't it?
I haven't tabled any placing for the company.
Well, we've seen quite a lot over the last few years. It's been very damaging to everyone here.
Yes, and I have worked hard for 7 months in order to get the position. I think we have a new rebasing of the company. We're not talking about raising money at this stage. I'm talking about positioning the company appropriately in the market.
May I just ask, if you go 10 to 1 and the par value drops to 1 penny, that's basically what you're asking, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a share consolidation 10 to 1 and the par value, yes.
So that in itself is giving out a very negative.
Well, the par value hasn't changed. Your percentage.
The market cap of the business hasn't been 10 to 1.
Market cap doesn't change.
No, I realise that. But if we get to 5, let's say 5p, so today's trading is about 0.5 pence. If the par value reduces to 0.01p, basically the board is saying they're not confident that the market cap of the business will remain sufficient to remain above the penny.
I don't agree. The board is confident in the prospects for the company moving forward.
I can totally see you're committed. Don't get me wrong. I do see you're completely committed, and it's excellent. I say to my wife this morning that, well, honestly, a few months ago I didn't think I'd be sitting here, so I'm very grateful. But my question just comes back to the point: is this a negative sign or is this a positive sign for the short term? That's what I'm saying. So if you want the par value to be 0.1 rather than a penny, and you want to do a 10 to 1, that tells me that we could be trading at 5p next Monday, but in time we could actually be back down to 0.5p. The market cap at that point will be less than £1 million. So the board is giving me a sign that they think there is the potential for the company to have a market cap of less than £1 million.
Well, the board doesn't share that view. The board
if you didn't share that view, you wouldn't want to reduce the par value. Par
value has to change, otherwise we cannot issue new shares for cash. That is a fundamental aspect under the Companies Act. What you're talking about is the market price coming down because of a share consolidation.
Maybe I'm getting confused, because if the par value is still a penny and you do a 10 to 1, what are the chances of the company share price actually being reduced in the market lower than a penny?
Yeah, and as Steve has mentioned, that there has been experience of 8 companies with a share consolidation where the price has come down. I think the par value is less, but we need to do the par value change, otherwise we can't move forward as a company. That is clear. The share consolidation is to put the price back above a penny, which we believe is fairly representative of where a good trading price is and should attract more investors in due course. I think to trade at a fraction of a penny is the wrong step.
When you need to raise funds for whatever you need, we come back to the shareholders. At the moment, we don't have trust, faith and confidence. Nothing personal. But as a shareholder, and I'm sure others feel the same way, there's no trust, faith or confidence at the moment. So I don't want you doing anything without control. And the control lies with the shareholders. I don't want to give any more control to the board, because I don't trust the board. Sorry.
Understood. Thank you. Well, we have spoken about the possible future of the company and where we expect to deliver. The company has to deliver. There have been various tasks on my desk. The first bit was restoring a listing and getting value back, otherwise you'd have nothing. The second is setting the company up with the ability to move forward in recognising the value we can create out of Cabway, but also perhaps raising money at some point in the future. I mean, if everything is successful, the pilot plant delivers, then we've got to consider a full-scale plant.
And at that point, you can come back to shareholders and you get my support.
Thank you.
Are you saying that the pilot plant can monetise us and then get us above 40?
Well, the pilot plant represents the achievement of a successful generation of the precipitate from the zinc, lead and the tailings.
It looks fantastic, and Jeremy's done an excellent job in presenting that to us. It looks lovely.
But the pilot plant is costed within the working capital that we have at the moment. If we go further, we're going to have to need to raise cash. You'll be aware also that I've said in the chairman's statement in the accounts that we have a VAT issue because of, I wouldn't say problems, but because of the accounting function that didn't invoice correctly previously. We're in discussions with HMRC about VAT. They are looking at claiming back the VAT, which is to the tune of over £250,000, which I've announced. If we have to pay that in one go, if we lose the battle, obviously that limits the working capital. And my job is to protect the company for you, as well as to creating value. So if we need to raise cash, we've got to set up the company in a position to do so.
One last question on that point is it fair to say that what you're trying to basically do with this part value, you don't have to do it, you just basically have to do it. Is it more of an insurance policy for the board or the company? Is that what you need? I don't want to get confused between what you have to do and what you need to do.
Well, if the share price stays as it is and we need to raise money, we can't do so. Simple as that. It's against the law.
Doing a 10-to-1 consolidation.
10-to-1 consolidation because we believe we're putting the company's share price back on a proper footing. The change in the share value is nothing to do with the consolidation in terms of the market price.
So why are you doing it?
Well, I've explained to you why we're changing the par value, and I hope I've explained why we're doing the share consolidation. It's to put the share price back at the level.
I understand.
Sorry?
One actually contradicts the other. I know exactly what you're saying, but it's kind of you're basically saying that there is a potential for market cap of business to be below £1 million.
Yes.
I know we can't
Then share that
go
view.
crystal ball. But if you did, then maybe a penny would stay after a 10-to-1 consolidation.
I hear what you say, and we need to deliver for you.
The board's very confident about the future of this company from today with the new board and things being cleaned up from the past. But the problem is, we've heard from other speakers about share price drift, that this 10-to-1 consolidation brings share price theoretically up tenfold, but in fact it may drift down, especially if you have no news. Now, if you want a fundraising, the question shareholders ask, is this, it's not a rights issue, it's to institutions, presumably. Is it at a premium or a discount? And that, you've no control of the share price in the next few months or 1 year till we get this profit card.
Well, I would like to believe in a proper working stock market. It's not an efficient mechanism, it's not an efficient market, but I'd like to believe that we can deliver good results and that the share price will move in an upward progression. But
when you ask for money, then do you ask for it at a premium to the current share price then, or at a discount?
Well, my job is to achieve the best result I can for you as shareholders.
But you don't know what?
I haven't said anything about raising money.
What you would do after 5 projects working and you want the proper thing, proper plan.
Well, yes, I've said as the pilot plant, if that's successful, we're going to need to raise money.
Yes.
If we develop a full-scale plant, if that's the decision, if that's the way we decide to go.
One of your justifications is to control risk, to protect us. So set out a more meaningful justification, as in a much smaller issue of additional shares and a much smaller consolidation to protect that potential VAT bill or any other liabilities that you have identified, and then we might be willing to vote positively in relation to that resolution. But as it stands, I will definitely be voting against it. And the next one.
I understand what you're saying, and I think we're going around slightly in circles, so I'd like to put this resolution 7 to a vote, please.
Hang on a minute, just one last thing, because I think this is a big issue with a lot of people. Personally, to make my point of view clear, I don't want to oppose the board. I think a lot of what you're saying makes a lot of sense. The only thing I would have said is there's no way of delaying it until we've got good news. We've had it today that there is good news coming, and it's not going to be too far away. Is there no problem?
Well, we hope there's good news coming. We're not saying that for certain.
It might come. I mean, we don't know.
We don't know.
Essentially, what I'm trying to get at as well with the time frames is that once the terms of the terms of reference are submitted, then the ball gets rolling quite quickly. It's about 2 weeks after that, and then 60-day process after that. But there was a bit of vagary about how long it will take to get to that point where then there's the 2 weeks and the 60 days, and I'm a little bit sceptical as to whether that's going to turn from maybe a month to 2 months to 6 months.
Is this the SEMA thing?
Yes. Yeah, because obviously that's the next good news we're looking towards, isn't
Well,
it?
the SEMA thing is not on the critical path to getting the pilot plant operating. That's all I can say.
No, but it is for production.
Yeah, you need production. But when you look at the design of the plant and the installation of the plant and the SEMA approval, the SEMA approval will kick in earlier on the basis of what we have been told and what we're going to pursue than when the pilot plant actually comes into operation. Is that clear? Does that explain what you're... Don't regard the SEMA thing as the critical part. We believe that we can... Well, we're very confident that we can sort it. So
you're carrying on as if you're going to get it a formality?
Absolutely. Look, we've had conversations with the SEMA people. They understand what we're going to do and what the process is. The big thing about it is that we're not going to discharge toxic fluid. That really excites them, because Cadbury at the moment is obviously a bit of a disaster area when it comes to the environment. So what we're doing is we're taking 200,000 tonnes of lead out of the environment, plus a new process is not going to cause any further environmental issues.
The key thing is when the 60-day period starts, and we can't define that. But
no, not clearly. But sorry, can I just say one last thing? We have started the process of getting the terms of reference together, as it's started now. So we're not waiting another week or two. We actually have started the process.
Steve.
Jeremy, what people are worried about is this slide on no news, because our name is notorious. A lot of people invested in a lot of other companies and they've seen in their portfolio before. So really what we're saying is we're expecting to have good news, and from the pilot at last, the main thing that I've been waiting for since inception is to be able to prove that our tailings are going to produce this concentrate and be in the lowest quartile cost. I've always believed that's going to be the case. Once we can prove that we can get X amount of metal from each tonne, and we can prove an average costing, then it's going to be a whole new ballgame. People will be able to understand that, and they'll be able to extrapolate forward, and they'll be able to make a true assumption of what we're really worth. And all I was saying is there no way that we could have waited until we had some better news. If we can't, I don't want to vote against the board. But if we can, I would say, let's exercise some caution if it's at all possible.
I would echo what Steve just said. I expected a more measured and considered approach, rather than what you appear to be saying is just give me carte blanche. That's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned.
And if you are going 10 to 1 and the market cap of the business does drop, which it could do on no news, so I'm not saying bad news, I talk to you, I want to chat to the wrong game. surely somewhere along the line, given the circumstances, some exceptional circumstances we've got here, everybody's a bit cross. I think
yes, I understand. And the words I used when I came into the company, I was shocked by what had happened.
Well, I think it comes down to the fact that we're all, well, I am, I can't speak for anybody else, I'm very enthused. I think you've got a good team here, but there must be surely something as an insurance policy for us. Take an insurance policy for the company. There's got to be some sort of insurance policy for the shareholders where you can offer us not necessarily a rights issue, but a placing.
Well, some of these questions, thank you, relate to other resolutions which we can come to. But we've got to move forward with the meeting, so I'm going to put Resolution 7 to the meeting. All those in favour of that. And I would say, before asking your hands, Resolution 7 is an ordinary resolution, and we have 153,826,154 in favour, 13.6 million against, 26.4 million discretionary votes, and 744,000 abstaining. So all those in favour of the resolution, please raise your hands.
Sorry, can you raise your hand? Raise your hand.
All those against the resolution? Ordinary resolution, I declare that carried. Resolution 8 is the Director's authority to allot shares. Any questions about this? This is just a general authority.
This is to raise the capital for the full working plant, isn't it?
Well, we need to have the authority in place to be able to issue new shares. Resolution 10 relates to the disapplication of preemption rights. Preemption rights are sort of enshrined in company law in the UK, and that's about not issuing new shares on a pro rata basis to existing shareholders. This just provides the authority to issue shares. We don't have the authority. We can't issue a single share in the company. It's only to the company's interest to issue, to be able to have this authority.
I rang you about this, and I think most people were worried about the 5 million shares, such £5 million being raised as a maximum, wasn't it? But actually you said that you wasn't actually going to raise the full 5 million.
And we have no plans to issue, at this stage, any shares whatsoever. I think it's a bit of a misnomer in the market that people will suddenly think I'm going to issue £5 million worth in nominal terms of shares. That is not the case.
And just out of curiosity, how much does the full working plant actually cost to get the money? Just out of curiosity.
Well, we're still in the motions in terms of defining that, but we're still putting together our plans for the pilot plant, where we have a budget for that, which falls within the working capital for the current, a full working plant. We saw Sables Inc. and that they've spent millions on what they've got next door. We believe that the full plant is of the order of £1.5 to £2 million in due course. But we have no intention whatsoever of issuing £5 million worth nominal shares, and certainly in order to protect your interests, I'm not interested in flooding the market with shares. I'm a shareholder in the company, and we want to see results in the company before we can do anything really.
And just for the benefit of those maybe here that are not fully averse to how this works, there's been a number of assertions that we've given you the ability to first of all consolidate the company, and then once that consolidation occurs, to then be able to raise up to 500 million shares on top of what we currently have in issue, therefore diluting the company out of all proportions. And I just wanted to hear it so that you can explain to you how it will work, so that people can have confidence that that's not what you're proposing.
Well, this is a resolution to provide effectively a facility for share issue. We have no intention whatsoever of issuing that number of shares at this price to dilute everybody. It's of no interest to me. It's a facility in place. If we manage to grow the business, if we manage to get successful results, and we want to use a small part of that to raise money, then we will consider that at the time.
So why do you need 500 million shares?
I have to say, I agree, it's a very large facility.
No, that's a massive fear, that you could actually triple the amount of shares in issue, dilute most long-term holders to nothing, really. I know you're probably saying you're not going to do that, but why couldn't it be a lower figure? Why couldn't it be a higher par value? Why couldn't it have been like that? Why was it 500 million shares?
Well, we sought advice on a general facility, and this is appropriate. A number of companies that have facilities like this in place, but I don't know a single listed company that's ever used the facility in full. It's a facility only. We have no plans to issue that number of shares at the moment. We need to have a general authority to be able to issue shares.
With respect, that's what the last board said.
And
then secondly, you just admitted you have no intention. So now let's set again a realistic framework. 100 million.
Well,
who's giving you the advice of 500 million? And what?
I introduced advisors at the beginning of this meeting.
So they give you their advice to do.
And I would like to say to you, with a new company name and a new management team, we have nothing to do with the old board of the company.
Accepted.
I think we have to move on from that position. This is, so as I say, this is a facility, and I recognise your views on that. This is an ordinary resolution, and I'd like to put the vote to the meeting, please. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? I declare the resolution carried. Thank you. Resolution 9. Unfortunately, this resolution comes about as a matter of the Companies Act, where there have been losses at a company and more than half the value in nominal terms of the company has been swallowed up by the losses. We as a board need to consider routes to take in order to address the depletion of net assets. So it's a formal standard resolution that is put to the meeting. Does anybody have any questions on that? Can I put the vote to the meeting, please? All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Resolution 10. What I'd say at the outset is we need to provide for the possibility of having to issue shares at some point in the future. We have no present intention of issuing any shares. There's a lot of talk in the chat lines about me injecting a business into the company, diluting them out of sight. I am with you as a shareholder in the company. I've invested a lot of money relative for an individual in the business. I know some of you invested an awful lot more of that. I sympathise with your losses and I want to create value. The last thing any of the board want to do is to issue shares to dilute the value of the shareholders. That is not our intention. But we need to have a facility in place in order to be able to issue shares. Resolution 8 was the authority to issue shares. Resolution 10 equates to the opportunity to issue shares on a non-preemptive basis. Obviously, one of the things the board will do is, if there is a fundraising, look to consider that on a preemptive basis in any event. That's part of our duty. But it's only appropriate that we have the authority in place to be able to issue shares on this basis.
Can you just explain to me what this... I don't really understand the concept of preemptive basis. Is there a English definition of that?
Well, UK company law, as I say, it doesn't happen in every country, but it's enshrined by the protection of shareholders. So whenever you issue new shares, you do it on a pro rata basis to shareholders. So if you have a rights issue, everybody has the right to subscribe pro rata of their current holding. Some companies raise money through a placing, which is accompanied by an open offer, which is something we could consider. By that, to take an example, if we had somebody who wanted to invest in the company, we could then offer shares back that are equivalent to the shares that are being placed on a pro rata basis to shareholders. So pro rata, which is equivalent to the preemption of shareholders, enables you to participate and maintain the value of your shareholding. As Steve and others have said, that means you're not diluted by a share issue. We also need to consider the opportunity to issue shares for instance, an acquisition. And this would be on a non-preemptive basis as well. So it is, every company has this authority in place. Again, I would say the numbers of shares that are subject to this resolution look pretty large in my view, and I have no intention whatsoever, in the current circumstances, of issuing this number of shares on a non-preemptive basis. You would not accept me as chairman chief executive of the company if that was to be done. I'm fully cognizant of that. So any further questions on that resolution?
I think people want to be confident really before we vote on that, but I understand that it's an expensive process as well, offering all of those shares to the shareholders. But, we are worried about being diluted, because here, you've got a chance of being diluted, 5-1, which is a huge amount. Now, whilst I understand that every time you want to raise money, you don't really want to be running to the shareholders, especially if they're not, significant amounts, because it would just be too expensive. I do want, and you have actually acknowledged the fact that, that is a huge amount of commitment that we're giving you.
I agree. I think
if it was 100 million, if you were doubling our stake, for example, whatever the exact number is, I think it wouldn't have been such a huge hurdle. But bearing in mind what's happened in the past, and it shouldn't be a reflection on you. You mustn't. If people are speaking strongly here, you should not take it personally at all, because it's not meant to be that way. But you have to understand our position too. When you're faced with the possibility of having 5 times as many shares issued, then people know us. I'm sure you would be on this.
Yes, and my duty, I'm well aware of my duties. I've told you what I've done in the past against individuals and against companies is to protect the company for shareholders. I will seek recoveries where I can. I would not want to issue shares at too low a price because it dilutes everybody. We have to look at the future for the company. I mean, you give the board of directors authority to run the company in order to create value, and we will seek ways to do that. If we do issue all these shares, there's nothing left for you. It would be a nonsense to do that.
You could say by altering that figure to 100, doubling the equity in the company at the moment, but we're still giving you a huge amount of trust.
I think one thing with this, if it goes through, which I think it probably should.
Of course it will go through the board.
Look, I'm not arguing with Alex, but if I can speak up and say that, it's only what I think 90% of the guys here are thinking. So it's better to have it out in the open.
Retrospectively, if it doesn't go through, let's say, and it's 100 million, in 6-12 months' time, if that figure is then up,
yeah, but then it'll be coming back to the share. It'll be coming back to the people who put the money into the company.
I know.
Sorry?
And we'll have the pilot plant up and running, and we'll know what the business plan will do.
I think that everybody should speak now. So Alex,
put it to the vote.
Alex, earlier on, this is relevant to this question. You said you're here for the long term. I'm just interested, what's long term to you?
Well, we all want to create value for all of us. There's no question about that. And if we're all deluded out of sight, that wouldn't make sense, because we're not going to see individual value. For me, I would like to be with the company for a number of years in order to achieve success. Now that success obviously comes in the first way of an increasing share price. How do we achieve that? We achieve that by delivering on the results, on progressing with the assets that we've got at the moment, perhaps acquiring 1 or 2 other businesses, perhaps acquiring by the issue of new shares, new investors in the company who can help deliver. I think there are all manner of changes that we can put in place. So we have no intention, and if it helps, I think one of the responses we should address is that we should give a commitment that we're not going to use this whole authority. Maybe if we I think we've got to have authority in place, and I can't change the resolution, but what we can do is put a commitment to you that we are not going to use, say, half this facility. I have no intention of using half either, but we need to start from somewhere. So if I can announce today that, notwithstanding the passing of this resolution, we commit not to use more than half of this. It's a bit of a nonsense to do that, but I hear what you say. We've got the resolution in place, we have to pass it, but I will announce today that only half of that resolution at a maximum will be used.
Well, I'll be voting yes first.
Thanks, Steve. Terrific support for the company.
Will you be putting the commitment in writing, or is it just...
No, I will announce that on your right slightly behind you is our nominated advisor, and if I'm putting a step wrong, I will get some arrows thrown at me. So I would say, I think we need to address this at the next AGM. So what we'll say until the next AGM, we will not, put it that way, issue more than half. I think we need to word it properly, because we have no intention. So thank you, Steve. Thank you all, and I'm grateful to you for consideration and your questions on this. But if I can put the resolution to the vote, please. And I would say, first of all, we have in favour 123,224,690 votes in favour, 36,559,665 against. For discretionary voting, 25,481,803, and abstaining 9,294,234. And as I say, it is a standard resolution to give the board the authority. What is in question is the size of this, and I think we can address it through that way I've suggested by announcing that. All those in favour, please raise their hands. You're an accountant, Mr. Registrar. All those against, please raise your hands. I declare the resolution carried, subject to the announcement, as I've said. That draws to conclusion the annual general meeting. We are open for further questions, obviously, after this, but I thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you all for sending in your proxies. I appreciate your support, and I will work hard to deliver further results for the company. But I'm very glad to have the company back on a much better footing. Thank you for your support.
So, that concludes the meeting. If you want to leave, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we have directors here. Mark and Horatio now stepped down from the board of the company. They've left the board. And we have Jeremy and I as the directors. We are continuing after this with a further board meeting, so we can't be too long, but happy to address any questions you have.
Very quick question, Alex. You said you haven't received a penny so far for what you're doing. I'm sure a jolly good chat. How will you be remunerated?
No, I'm sure I didn't say I haven't received a penny. Oh, I see. Prior to my involvement, I didn't receive a penny from Masood.
Right.
I do have a couple of other opportunities that I work on. It's been hard work at the company. I've worked 7 months without weekends. I had to have a partial knee replacement, and I was told to take 2.5 weeks off. I was back to work the next business day. So I've taken no time off. My remuneration is the same as was published for Masood Al-Akhani, and I believe I've delivered significantly relative to that position. And that was approved by the board and the remuneration committee. I think looking at the opportunity for you to have somebody in my place, you could have paid somebody 3 times what I'm paid, and they may not have delivered the same results. So, thank you, I am paid. I think there is the opportunity, obviously, to issue options to incentivise, and we need to have a discussion on that. But
who's on the remuneration committee?
The remuneration committee now, after stepping down as ratio Mark, at the moment just comprises Jeremy and myself. Bear in mind, at the end of the AGM, we are the only directors of the company.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Reference the email. If we are putting an amendment in which we're drafting at the moment, will the same terms, will the production date where they're saying we've got 3 years, go from the new amendment date when they grant it, or will it be from the prior date from last year?
No, this is an entirely new submission.
So we could get a further 3 years from the submission then?
Yes. Yes, that's the way it would kick in. But we did actually ask them to try and regard it as an amendment, and they absolutely refused. It's too sensitive, is the Cadbury environment, and they said, no, you've got to address the whole thing again.
So this is a totally new application, not an amendment to the previous application. It is not an amendment, it's a totally new application. So we're taking out the bits that we need and what is actual forensic that we need now. So this is totally the new process again.
Yep.
And this is actually definitely going through, and it's all being accounted for, you're saying.
What in terms of the process?
Accountability to the companies that are actually doing the work for us.
Yes. Yeah. We're dealing with a consultancy who, as I said, the guy who heads it.
Do you have his name or not?
Jewett Masinya.
Can you spell that, please? Jewett.
Jewette. Jewett.
Yeah.
Masinya. SMS.
Well, why don't we send you an email just to confirm the spelling? Can you leave us your email address and we'll follow through?
Thank you.
Okay.
We went to see a copy of that amendment. We saw the original report on the legal website and we through it. Did we all see the amendment when it's completely submitted?
You'll see the whole report. I mean, it's a brand new report. The only thing, what we're doing is we're lifting the sort of the routine stuff out of the old report and putting it in this current report just to speed up the whole thing. The guts of it, the process, and we have to do the consultation with the local population. That's got to be redone. That's the real guts of the whole process. And that terms of reference at the moment are being put together to be submitted to Zima. They will look at it and give their approval fairly quickly. But what it does, it speeds the whole process. There's no point of putting a report in and finding it's a lot of old rubbish, and they say we missed this, missed that, this and the other. To get the terms of reference approved from them, and then we can do the entire report. And then we put the draft in with Zima. Zima then have a look at the draft, and then they come back and say, fine, that's okay, put the definitive report in.
And if any of you would like to see the operations in Kapwa, if you're on holiday in Zambia, let us know in advance and we can have a trip out there. Obviously, Jeremy and I flew out there last week. The cost of the flight was £125 each return, plus the tax on it. We flew through the night economy, and I must have had 10 hours sleep in 4 nights. So we're doing what we can. It's hard work and keeping the costs down.
I'm just like, as a personal thing, like I said earlier, I thought the company was a goner.
So did I when I first looked at it.
So all these questions, and I respect all the questions, and I'm not very happy about the fact that I haven't got as much money as I had. But at the end of the day, I just want to thank you for lifting things, and you've obviously worked very hard. What you have done is you've at least given us the opportunity, even at worst, to trade the stock. So
yes,
that's not my
first emphasis. Thank you very much for your kind words. The first thing was to get the market back, because without that you didn't have any value. So I concentrated on that. But I say I'm chairman of the company, but it is a team of people who work very hard. But it's a very, very small team of people.
But there's lots of opportunities, I guess, globally. So it'd be interesting to see what your plans are. I talked to copper or zinc in other continents.
Jeremy's got many areas of expertise, if you've got another 5 hours, but in all seriousness, I think there are tailings opportunities elsewhere in the world that we could add to the portfolio. We've already been to see tailings owners in different countries. We are conducting a bit of due diligence. We have dismissed the one that looked like a decent front runner, but it's no good as a listed company if we just stay with the operations in Kapwa. We want to create value, and if we can make this one of the successful companies on AIM, we've done a pretty phenomenal achievement.
Extract resources, I know there might be a lot of debt there, but the guy Jan is doing very, very well. I mean, he came in, it was a difficult situation for him, and he's gone for it. He's found some seriously good resources, and they're very close, if not starting to produce. So, okay, they've got 6 billion shares in circulation, but...
Well, I'm fully aware. I said to you, the 2 things I'm doing, creating value for shareholders and high standards of corporate governance. I hear what you say on share issues. I don't want to be diluted out of sight. No interest to me. My wife will shoot me for spending the money. So I recognise we've got to create value and we've got to do it sensibly. I've got a team of advisors around me. I've got a sensible board with me. I've got a new chap who I hope will join. It'll be very good to help us as well. And we're going to do everything we can for you. And I hope when we have the next AGM, which might well be this calendar year, we've got some good results to report.
It's marvellous and extremely sensitive as well. It's absolutely refreshing.
Can you give us more detail about the recovery of monies that you were talking about.
Yeah, I've got to be careful about the recoveries, because if I was to say to you who we want to recover money from, then obviously they're going to run in a backwards direction pretty quickly. So
it's nothing to do with Alicante.
No, I can't do that. What I achieved with the Alicante was to get money back, which has given us the listing.
Did you see a copy of the doctor's report?
Yes, I was actually a High Court judge who appointed an agent to act for him. The High Court judge was satisfied that he had an advanced state of dementia. Some of you have asked what sort of form of dementia it is, but it is the real thing as far as I understand. So in terms of recoveries, I can't comment, but be assured that I will pursue where I can. You know from my earlier comments I've got somebody in prison, and I will seek recovery where I can for you. But you have to bear in mind we cannot chase small amounts of money that cost a lot of money to achieve that. We can do it on a success fee arrangement, the CFA basis.
It's not small amounts, is it? I mean, talk about this pilot plant. I thought the pilot plant was there before. I thought it existed.
Well, we've had to rebase the company. There is no pilot plant. I think you're talking about a small copper processing plant at Cabway, and there's nothing there to justify that. We've written that down. What we have to do is start from scratch and beg and borrow to correct Jeremy's earlier statements.
You like things in threes, so my question is going to be the past, the present and the future. So past, we've got previous board and the chairman buying assets for 12 years with advice, professional advice, paid advice, expensive advice. We've got auditors, paid auditors, we've got signed up accounts, we've got a nomad clearing RNSs that are written through the market and released. And what you're now telling us, and no personal criticism to you at all, I'd echo the sentiments that have already been said.
Thank you.
But I find that incredibly difficult to believe that there's no recourse in the way of indemnity insurances, professional indemnity, and all of the claims that go with all of that. And what you're telling me, or what the board are trying to make me believe, is that that man, for 12 years, bought assets that were worthless apart from Cadbury, were buying copper assets that were worthless, and the paid advisors were telling us that they were worth this, and they was all paid for, and we've got no recourse, and actually it's worthless. I don't believe it. And these two people here have got to answer to us now, because they're here, they were on the previous board, they signed all this off, and I want to hear from them what they've got to say about that. They're lucky they're getting out of the room.
My position in first response is that we're moving forward with a new company. We've got a new company name. I've changed everything. I've terminated the contracts employment of everybody in London. We've got a new team in Zambia. We've got a new set of advisors completely. The previous nomad was responsible for the last couple of years in looking and vetting the announcements that went out. We've got a terrific support from our current nomad who's investigated everything. I have checks and balances around me, and I'm fully aware of corporate governance. I mean, I will ask, you're here, my colleagues or former directors are here. I do think it's appropriate that I ask each of them to comment on that briefly, but they're not here to be a target. They're here to just answer that brief question, if I may. So first of all, can I introduce you again to Mark Wainwright?
Yeah, thanks again. Obviously a disappointing time. Hindsight's a wonderful science, and yes, clearly we're not in a position we would have hoped for 2 years ago. I think, like yourself, when I first got involved with BMR, I looked as a potential investor would look. I looked at the numbers, I looked at the throughput, I looked at the potential of the business from a financial angle, as you would. And at that stage, as you did, as investors, this looked like an extremely attractive company. I know a little bit about mining. It looked like a good proposition in a good jurisdiction. I then looked at a governance angle, or I looked at the situation. It's an AIM-listed company. it had a nomad in place, it had a set of accounts signed off for a professional auditing company. That gave me the confidence that we were acting according to good principles of business, and made me want to invest time and effort in what I saw as an attractive future company. Clearly, as time wore on, decisions were made, communication took place. If one looks back, disappointing, perhaps could have been more. Again, I took, and I'm sure I'm speaking for other people, I took confidence from the competent persons, from the auditors, all the people you've talked about, as to the future well-being of the company. That hasn't taken place. I think it's extremely disappointing. If anybody was to point a finger at me, as you appear to do, as acting willfully and negligently, I would dispute that. I think my behaviour and those of fellows, I haven't run away. I'm here today. In those circumstances, I think people of lesser fibre would have run to the hills. I spoke extensively with Alex. We put myself in a position for continuity, for some understanding, to hand over to Jeremy and to Alex. And I stood by your interests at a time when I didn't want to, at a time when it was clear that there were health problems. And I have to say to you here and now, from the bottom of my heart, it sounds corny, I was instrumental as I watched some of the decision-making processes begin to unwind a little bit to take action. And I paid all due respects to Dennis in that respect, and working with the family to make sure that a company that basically, to take your point, was going nowhere. And without Alex and the present board, and without the action of people like Dennis, we wouldn't be in the position we would be in, and there would be no business. So yes, it's great to hold people accountable, and that's what the business is all around. I think we should look forward, and it's no great pleasure I get from standing up here and looking at the share price, looking at the vehemence and the disappointment of you as shareholders, and I think you're fully entitled to that. But I would say that the behaviours and the actions, certainly of the non-execs then, in transitioning from a very difficult situation, should give you a degree of confidence in the future, as should the performance of the new board today. And that's really all I can say. I'm not going to apologise, because I personally think I did all I could in extremely difficult situations, which probably none of you have ever been through.
But you were a director for 4 years, weren't you?
From 2007.
Yeah. You had the same responsibility as executive director. So not to say sorry for what's happened, I think is actually quite poor.
Not to what?
Say sorry for people in the stream. You say you're not going to apologise. I think you should apologise.
If I think there was wrongdoing, I would apologise. And we can argue that, and I'm not going to argue back to that. It's pointless of doing it.
You must have been sleepwalking in that position, and so must you. You are a disgrace. With all due respect to Alex and the rest of the new people here, you are a disgrace, and I'm glad you're going, because you have paid not one iota of interest in protecting the shareholders. You are a disgrace.
I'm not going to get into personal insults with you. I'm not going to swap those, but
one last question. It's just kind of a technical.
I haven't finished mine yet.
Quite a simplistic question.
Yeah. When
you used to have meetings, and you used to go to the offices, I assume you used to go to the current offices.
Yes.
I assume you would go there.
Of course.
Now, I've got offices in Putney. I own them, and I know the square footage.
Yes.
I know how many people are employed. I know how many desks are in there, how many computers are in there. Alex has said on numerous occasions, now this is just me being a bit picky, but what I'm trying to enlighten is an obvious thing. There's quite a lot of square footage there. There's a massive overhead there. At any point, did anybody say, do we need these offices? Who else is working in these offices? We need the overhead to be quite thrifty for the case of the business. What did you think about that? What was your take on that?
that there were other businesses operating there.
Did they pay BMR a rent?
There was many payments between the companies.
Did they pay BMR rent or not? Yes or no?
No.
But why didn't you question that? If I'm a director of a company, which I am, I would question that because I look for revenue at every single opportunity. So I think, look, I don't dispute you're professional, you're probably very good at what you do, and you work for a global company. In fact, I've worked for your company. I provide translation services to your company. So I know who they are. Surely you must accept that at some point there's a couple of little issues that you both as Neds may have picked up on, and just be human and just accept that there are some points you could have maybe said to the Sue, look, what's going on here?
I won't go into the past. There were plenty of points I did say, and there weren't small matters about.
All I'm trying to say
as a principle, I understand.
Do you kind of follow what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be nasty. I'm not trying to be personal. I think this chap here has got a point. I think to say you're not going to apologise, that's up to you. You don't have to apologise. Of course you don't. But I think a degree of sympathy would actually go down quite well to us guys who I dread to think the collective loss currently right now.
Yes.
And where I can see, we're all pretty normal people with probably normal families that thought the story was true, the suit was true.
Yes.
Whatever happened to that Mark Beach at the last thing? I mean, what a joke that was. Who the hell was he? Dennis. I mean, it's just like a comedy show. And you weren't at the last AGM. I was there. It was at some plush hotel on Park Lane. They had cocktails after hours, wasn't it? So all I'm trying to say is a little bit of sympathy may bode well, because Alex, I think, they're doing a sterling job, and it would just help create a little bit of conscience.
I think you're incorrect in saying that I have no empathy. I mean, I don't
see it. So whether I'm correct or not.
There's numbers, there's values, there's share erosion, there's been many activities, there's been many discussions pre-Alex where I've tried to intervene on your behalf, sometimes with success, sometimes without. And I'm not going to go into all of the details of those. Whether it made an impact, it clearly didn't.
And Horatio, you're financial, aren't you? You're a financial controller. Is that what your role is? Or you weren't the financial controller, but you are a finance man, I believe.
Not really. My background is mostly in engineering.
Okay, forgive me. I thought you were into finance.
And in deal making, my background is mostly in those fields, and that's what I came for.
So you never had
not that I got much of an opportunity to contribute, because we were never close enough to production. But I did intervene. I did, I'm sure, also Mark did, challenged many things, but we couldn't sleep well.
If you weren't happy with what Masood was doing, you should have resigned publicly and told the shareholders why. Because then that would have set alarm bells ringing for a lot of people here.
Yeah, it's quite
seriously.
It's relatively weak.
Can I move on, Alex? Can I propose and move on to the second part of my question, which is present, and then my third part, which is future?
Carry on. Yes.
Right. Okay. So present, because I think we've dealt with the past, and I do accept that both of you are here and you've taken the flak for a much wider, so I respect you for that, and everyone said their piece. Present, so I have to trust the current board, and what would help me trust the current board is if I saw the previous reports which I paid for as a shareholder for all of the assets. I don't see why they can't be made available on the website, and the more recent reports which effectively write down all of those assets, so I can make, in a transparent and honest and open way, so I can make a value judgment as to how and why those assets have been written down, as they have, and the share price has consequently plummeted. We're in this to make money, all of us, including yourself. I can see how I can make money. or could have made money. It's nice and convenient, and I'm not suggesting you did it for those reasons, but it's nice and convenient share price plunged, and we're the ones that have lost the money. We now have a chance to gain money together, so we are aligned now, but we weren't before, and you're now a shareholder, and I accept that you're between a rock and a hard place. If you buy when it's high before it falls, people, you've got to buy at some point, and I respect you for buying when you did.
Let me just answer a couple of those things. Well, I remember what you're saying. First of all, we are subject to the AIM rules. Obviously, the Companies Act and what we can do, and the AIM rules as a company. So we put on display any and all agreements that we're required to do. We have a regulatory requirement to do so. So you're welcome to have a look at the archives and see all the announcements and agreements that are disclosed. I appreciate not all the agreements are there. The second point is that we need to move forward from where we are, and we're comfortable with the asset position of the company, and there have been a lot of write-offs. You're asking about the background of some of the acquisitions. I'm happy to have a discussion with you on that. I have to be careful about obviously disclosing things that I shouldn't disclose or can't disclose, but we can certainly follow through on that. I suggest we have a separate meeting after this, not today if you'll forgive me, but another time. We need to progress matters. The third thing I'd note in response to your query is about the timing of the share price. I'm here to look after you and protect you, and I was aware with the extent of the losses that the company was to announce that the share price could have plummeted to 0.2, 0.3. That was the market feedback I got. The market price did come down. I think it opened at something like 0.45, 0.47, so it was nearly double where I expected, and it has come up a little bit since then. I am a great believer in corporate governance, and I did not buy shares as soon as the stock came back to trading. You would have said to me, you've announced all these write-offs, the share price has plummeted, you bought shares, and now it goes up because you bought shares. So I waited a week or so to buy shares, and I could only do it outside a closed period. So I think my actions to buy shares were completely fair. I think the recovery you got in the share price is pretty significant, really, and we're almost back to a penny. Obviously there have been some share sales, and there's been a healthy level of trading, but I would like to see it go through that barrier, notwithstanding share consolidation. Well, no, we have been nearer a penny. I think I bought at 0.5.
It went up.
Yeah.
Last week Friday.
Yeah. I'm aware, and somebody followed me buying in, they paid 0.65p. We are approaching, getting towards the penny level, which I see as quite perhaps a psychological barrier for trading. But there will always be sellers. The market isn't a perfect mechanism for trading.
So the future is, obviously some people in here and out the board still have a trust issue with the new board. I'm a big investor. I'm over £100,000 invested in Bmr. I feel if you and the board were to invest more into Bmr and be in the same boat as us, I think there'd be more trust from private investors going forward, especially with all these share resolutions and everything else going forward.
I hear what you say. I can't commit to making further investment. That becomes announceable, disclosable, and I can't do it outside closed periods, but we will, as a board, bear that message in mind. And your point on the future? Yeah,
the future. Okay, so we've got baseline now. You've got some resolutions which you can create. We've got a completely different front man in yourself, clearly experienced, very articulate, quite witty.
Quite. Reasonably so.
And we've got some reasonable, intelligent and well experienced people in the methodology and processing piece. But I'm still a little nervous about where the company goes if it hasn't got scale and capacity to produce the material in sufficient quantities in order to do the deals with offtake partners, because this business is about scale, and we don't have scale. So I'm interested to know what your strategy is for growing the shareholder value? This is my question. Is it partially organic? Is it partially by acquisition, or is it by packaging it and selling it?
David, thank you for your question. I don't sound like David Cameron, thank goodness, but thank you. What I'd say is that the testing is early stages. We have huge volumes of resources. If nothing else, Alakani acquired those assets, probably didn't know how good they were, but they're huge volumes. They contain good levels of metal content, which we hope to convert. It is early stage to know where the company's going. We are not going to, we're going to protect your interests. We're not going to use the company to do anything else. We need to generate revenue out of what we've got, otherwise we have nothing. And then, as I've said, we'd look to perhaps acquire other tailings businesses, because I think that point in the mining cycle, we're not early stage prospecting exploration, we're not mining, because that's huge cost. All we're doing is processing that point in the middle of the mining cycle, which I believe is far less risky. That's the right way around, and we can generate something at the end of it. And we will look at opportunities. I hope you'll appreciate the announcements that I put out. They've got my name on. As I've said, reputation is key. We talk about a trust issue, and I'm there to earn your trust, but I'm doing everything I can for the increasing the value of the company. We recognise all the statements you've said today. In terms of humour, of course, I was told not to make too many jokes in my position, because it wouldn't be appreciated. I have said earlier that I'm very sorry for your losses, and I mean that sincerely. I have lost money investing in other people in the past. But I did tell them last night a story in the cab on the way to a meeting last night. I'm not just finished with this, if I may. It's about the story of the cross-eyed javelin thrower at the recent Olympics. He didn't win any medals, but at least he kept his audience alert. And with that, Steve, we have to draw to close, because I've got to continue with our board meeting. Last question.
I wouldn't mind just a couple of important points. The first is, going forward in the future, it is going to be about scalability. As I said, the company should easily be able to prove. I think the most important thing going forward is that we prove that we're in that lowest quartile. If we can do that, then we should be able to generate a lot of interest from some of the other major players, because we're very lucky that the interest particularly in zinc, but also in lead, is very strong, and the trends going forward are very powerful. The second point I want to make just before we finish is, if I can just address it to Jeremy at the moment, is I know that you've done work with the World Bank before, and that you're speaking to them now. But what I want to make it public, because I didn't really know what the right venue was. I didn't want to say anything on the boards, but I do actually know quite a bit about what's been going on at the World Bank, because, as you know, I instigated it.
Yeah, Mr. Steve, we welcome your participation.
No, I'm not trying to take credit, but I just want to put this on the record. I want to say that when I instigated that action, and when I was speaking to the people at the World Bank when we first started, the thrust of the initial opening, and they agreed and showed a great deal of interest, was, I said, that Cadway has a huge problem, which they acknowledge, and the Blacksmith Institute also acknowledges that problem. If they want to address this problem, and they've thrown over $50 million at it before, if they want to address that issue, it's impossible for them to address that issue unless they address it with the help of BMR. Now, our leverage is, do they want us to address that issue over 2 years or 3 years, or do they want to have a problem going on for another 10 or 15
years? Steve, I think you have great knowledge there. You've had great contacts. We've had meetings in the office about this. I think the best thing to do is for us to have a separate meeting with you to follow up on that. So I look forward to following up with both of you.
I'm only saying it because I want people to take some hope from that.
We did address the World Bank in part before, but we can follow up on this and then update shareholders as appropriate afterwards. But I think we have to draw it to a close. So I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
And can I thank you, Alex, for
thank you very much.